we are live. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Addison's Advocate. Today's episode is going to be super awesome, super cool. We're going to be chatting with Deborah Northrup. She was actually one of the first people to ever message me, and one of the first people that I've actually interacted with in like real life, as far as like the digital world goes, real life, who actually had Addison's disease as well. So it's kind of crazy. I think she found my YouTube video that I posted back in like 2020 of me sharing my story, reached out, and then we've been friends and just like communicating like on a semi-regular basis ever since then. So I figured it's only fitting for the start of, you know, this new podcast and everything to have her on, since she's there from the beginning and has been growing with it since the beginning, and then have her on to just like share her story. So I figured Deborah, if you want to give yourself like a little introduction, who you are, kind of where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'm from East Tennessee. I am a full-time mom. I'm like a teacher assistant at a school. I work full-time there, helping kids. I'm like an in-school tutor, helping kids from where they were behind during COVID when schools were all out and stuff like that. I'm a wife, a full-time churchgoer. But yeah, that's pretty much it. My dog is being super loud right now. Quit, Oreo.
That's okay. We love dogs.
Oreo, quit.
That's amazing.
But yeah, and I found Levi, like you said, through YouTube when. Come here, Oreo. Here, we'll just
be part of the show.
Oreo. He needs groomed really bad. But yeah, I found Levi through YouTube when I come after my diagnosis during, I think, yeah, it was 2020, right? Yeah, that's what it was. I wrote down on here. Yeah.
I was like very shortly after mine then.
Yeah, no, I went into a crisis in 2021. So it was 2021 when I come across your video. Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay, so your crisis was your first diagnosis. You went into a crisis when you were diagnosed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like that's the majority of us. That's how you kind of find out that you're diagnosed in the first place.
Yeah.
Dang. Well, I mean, I feel like that kind of tees it up then. I feel like it would be awesome to hear your story of diagnosis. Like,
yeah.
When did things start? When did you kind of notice like something was wrong?
So at the very beginning, I guess if we want to go back to when I was about 9 years old, I've actually struggled with like autoimmune situations since then. I have psoriasis, and I had it severe when I was 9 years old, and like one of the worst cases they had ever seen in kids. And so ever since then, I've had psoriasis pretty much majority of my life, and not just like a little here and there. I mean, like bad. And then I got put on injections for that, and so that helped tremendously. And so I got put on injections for my psoriasis in April of 2019. And they say, you know, those biologics can kind of alter your immune system in a way. But we've looked into it. It's not that they think that injection or anything caused my crisis or anything like that. They do think that COVID may have. So I got put on those injections in 2019, and I had COVID in November of 2020. My whole family had it. It's back when everybody had it. And then the February of 2021, I went into a crisis. But before that, it was like right after I'd gotten COVID, those next couple of months, I like was experiencing symptoms of like being out of breath. I couldn't I remember like trying to, and I was subbing at the school, so I wasn't working full time at the time, but I also worked an after school program during this time. So like I would sub at the school for 8 hours and then go and work an after school program for 2 hours. So I was working like 10 hours a day. Man. And I was just thinking maybe I was just like drained.
Yeah.
Because like I had symptoms of like I couldn't stand at the sink and do dishes. I couldn't like take a shower and like hold my hands above my head and like try to wash my hair. Um, I remember like getting out of the bed in the mornings and like I would stand up and literally like see black, like I was about to pass out. Um, and so we started noticing those things, and um, I would experience like nausea, like bad, like nothing. And I've had two kids, and but this was super weird. Um, but it was mostly the standing up too fast that I had begun to notice, and I started like Googling things, and I thought, oh, it's my blood pressure. Like something's wrong with my blood pressure.
Yeah.
Um, so we started like taking my blood pressure with like a home one that you just do yourself, and it would just say like 80 over 40 when I would take it at home, and I was like, what is going on with me? So I went to the doctor multiple times in I'd say January 2021, yeah, multiple times. So when I was going to the doctor, they would take my blood pressure there and they would do it like with a manual cuff. And on theirs, it would be fine. I mean, they would just tell me that it's okay and um, they didn't see any problems. And I was like, but I'm like really weak. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think I'm working myself too hard. I mean, I have a lot of things on my plate, but like, I'm like really don't feel good. And so they did a bunch
Mhm.
of labs, ran blood work, and one of the panels of my blood work came back that my sodium was low, but not like severely low. So they called me and they were like, "You need to drink some Gatorade." And so I was like,
That's
"Okay."
what they told you to do? Just drink some Gatorade?
I was like,
Okay.
"Okay." So I was like, "Okay, that's gonna fix it." She was like, "You need to just increase." They were like, "Just increase your salt and drink some Gatorade."
Yeah.
So
What?
I just went on with life. Like I have things to do and two kids to
Yeah.
like raise and but then it just started getting bad. Like so bad. And one of the bad days I was scheduled to go get my hair done with my mom and I was literally getting my hair done and I couldn't stop shaking. And I was like, "What is wrong with me?" And I felt so bad. Um and then I come home that night and I just laid in the bed like I couldn't even get out of the bed. Um, and I hate to say this, but like this is how easily it goes. Just misdiagnosed, like just whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not gonna name hospitals or anything, but my husband took me to the ER that night, and after me laying in the bed for like 2 days, just like couldn't do anything. Um, he took me to the ER, and they sent me home with a blood pressure of 80 over 43, I think. And they were like, "Oh, that's normal for some people," and didn't even like check my like they had tried to get a vein and stuff like wasn't working. Didn't tell me my labs before I left. Sent me home, and they were like, "Oh, that's normal for most people, for like people your size." And I was like, "But I feel so bad," and they were like, "But if you feel bad, but if you feel okay, then it's fine." But I told them, and I was like, "I feel bad, but you're like sending me home," and they sent me
Yeah.
home. They sent me home, and then another day later, I was throwing up and throwing up a lot, and I was shaking. Like, still, I had been shaking for like days, and I couldn't eat anything. I could barely even drink anything. Um, my husband took me to a different hospital. We were on our way to a different hospital. We were in the car, and I was like, "Jared, I'm don't feel like I'm gonna make it to the hospital." Like, and I could barely speak at this point. I was like, I literally don't feel like I'm gonna make it. And he stopped on the side of the road. We called the ambulance. Um, I get in the ambulance, and the ambulance driver is like, "Have you ever experienced anxiety?" And I was like, "I have, in the past, but like this doesn't feel like that." And after talking to me for a little bit, he was finally like, "I honestly feel like you might have something else going on."
Mm.
And so they thankfully they did start like an IV, like fluids in the ambulance. Um, so I got to the ER. Um, while I was in the ER that night, they, running labs. I was kind of in, like, at this point, I was talking out of my head. Um,
Mm.
my husband said that I was talking about like something in Africa, and my kids had ball games that day, and he said, you was like, did they win the ball game? Um, they started an IV and they took my labs. He said I was trying to pull the IV out of my arm, and they
So you
put
were like
the
fully like
yeah,
gone.
yeah, like my mind was not there at all. They had gave
Wow.
me some stuff to like help me calm down, I think because I was shaking so bad, and they were like they went to try to do like a CT scan, I think, or yeah, something like that to see if I had like had a stroke.
Mm.
Um, but I couldn't even like get up to lay on the table. So they were like, she can't do it. Like finally when they got my blood work back, they seen that my sodium was 117 is what it had dropped down to. Yeah. And they were like, you need to give her like fluids and stuff that she needs like now. But when you're at that state, they can't give it to you too quickly because it could like damage like brain stuff.
Yeah, brain swelling. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the nurses had tried to give it to me too quickly. My husband said that the doctor came slamming in the room, slammed the door open, and was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "I need to speak to you outside of this room right now."
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, it was so bad. I mean, I still like it's like I still can't believe I'm like, did that really happen? So he was like, and by at this point my blood pressure was so low. He
Yeah.
was like, we have to get you up to ICU right now and give you blood pressure meds. And the reason you're going to ICU is because your blood pressure is so low.
So at
Um,
this point, you were in like the general admission. You weren't
yeah,
in
at this
actually in
point,
ICU at that
yeah,
point. Oh,
no, I
okay.
was just in like a regular room in the ER. So they put me in ICU that night, and I guess where maybe I'd gotten the sodium a little bit too quickly, I had the worst headache of my life in that
Mm.
ICU, like in that room. I just remember screaming and crying because my head hurt so bad, and nobody can be up there with you. Like it's still COVID
Oh,
time,
because this was
and
like peak COVID. Yeah.
yeah, and like I seen my husband maybe 45 minutes a day. And I was in the hospital I was in ICU for 3 days. Um, and I seen my husband maybe 45 minutes a day. And I was just screaming, crying that my head hurt so bad. And they had gave me all those fluids, and I was just sat up in the bed and like, I'm sorry if this is too much. I just like sat up in the bed and vomited out all those fluids that they had just gave me. But after that, it kind of calmed down, and things started kind of working. And that night, they ran my cortisol levels. Um, and it's kind of hard to tell because at night your body doesn't produce those levels
Mm.
naturally. Um, but mine was like, I still see I'm like not super well trained on all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was like, mine was like at 3.2 or something. And he said, I know it's at night. He said, but that's still kind of low even for a nighttime. He
Mm.
said, so one or two things, you either have like severe POTS or, um, which is where you stand up too fast, your blood pressure doesn't fluctuate right. He said, or you have
Mm-hmm.
Addison's disease. And I was like, okay. I mean, I'm like laying there, like barely like making it at this point. And they're like, so you have one of these two things. We're treating you for both. Um, and then you're going to have to see an endocrinologist and get official diagnosis, and you need to see a cardiologist. So they done a bunch of tests while I was in the hospital. They did, MRI on my head and scanned my heart, and all that stuff was still fine, thank the Lord, because I mean, when your sodium goes that low, you could have serious complications
Yeah.
after that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but they couldn't, like, I was laying in the hospital. I had been lost everything in my body. They couldn't find veins. They had to do like a central line to my
Mm.
heart, and that way I could get medicines through that, and that was terrifying. I mean, after you had been poked and prodded like 100 times, and then they're like, "We need to put in a central line," and it was just like, "Oh my gosh."
Oh,
Um, yeah. So that pretty much led to um that same year after my crisis in February 2021. That April. Sometimes it takes people a lot longer to get diagnosed. I was they sent me home from the hospital on blood pressure medication for POTS, and then also all the steroids that I was on. Um, so I was having a lot of anxiety and a lot of like, like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I still don't
yeah.
know. And so I stayed on top of doctors. Like, I pushed
That's
and
great.
pushed. Yeah, and it takes a long time to get into an endocrinologist. Like, it is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially for something like this, I feel like it should be taken more seriously, I guess. Like, especially after you've been like through a crisis and it was just so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was in February 2021 when I went in that crisis. That April, so like 2 months later, I finally got a diagnosis, and it was. Um, I just remember we were literally sitting at the table as a family when I got the phone call that I had Addison's disease. My cortisol was like non-existent. Um, Pretty much they did like all the where they put it in your arm, check the levels and come back and then redo it again.
Yeah.
So they did it like 3 or 4 times, and they were like, your adrenal glands did not respond at all. So yeah, we were sitting at the table as a family, I remember, and it had been the first time because I had felt so bad. It had been the first time we had actually sat down at the table as a family, and I had actually even cooked dinner. And I
Mm.
got the phone call that evening that I had Addison's disease for sure, and it was, autoimmune and all the things. So
What were your thought? Like, how did you feel when you heard that?
I was, I felt relieved, but also like absolutely terrified. Like, because you hear of like steroids, and I took like the whole steroid thing like to heart. I was like, I do not want to have to take steroids the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want this for me, like
Yeah.
for my family. Sorry, I feel like I'm getting emotional.
No,
But
it's an emotional thing.
yeah, and especially like we had just sat down as a family. Um, yeah, it was rough. But I was glad to know what it was. And another thing I was glad too is I didn't have to take this blood pressure medicine anymore. That was
Oh,
terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, I was on what they call midodrine to keep your blood pressure raised, and it is terrible.
Really?
For me, it was terrible. Um, that medication. So I mean, it was just all the medications. I was like, now I can just take this and not have to worry about the POTS thing. Yeah, I did have that testing done too, and I have a little bit of that, but I don't have to take medication for it.
Mm.
Just, it's Addison's and POTS have a lot of the same symptoms. So it's still like I still have those feelings of like sometimes like if I've not had enough salt that day or I've not drank enough fluids that day, I can tell,
Mm.
but it's definitely well controlled like by my medications now
Yeah.
just for Addison. So I was
Yeah.
just thankful, scared, and like I don't know. It was just a crazy evening
Yeah.
for sure. My husband like
So
went
were
and
you,
bought me some he my husband like went and bought me some not real flowers but fake flowers that I have from that night still to like hold on to, like, oh, I
oh,
remember that
wow.
night. I remember us all being together that night, and just it was crazy. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So in that period between when you got sent back after they stabilized you from like ICU and then when you actually got your diagnosis, were you were on just, it sounds like, a plethora of like random steroids and stuff that probably kept you somewhat even keel until you got your actual
Yeah.
diagnosis?
Yeah, so they sent me home on like I don't even know how much it was, but you have to like taper off how much ever. I feel like I had to come home tapering off of like 100 milligrams a day.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it was like I didn't do any kind of taper stuff in the hospital, really. Um, so it was just um, coming home tapering off that, and that's rough. Like having to
Mm,
taper off that is rough.
yeah.
Um, so once I got that leveled out, it was a lot better. I kind of like felt like myself a little bit,
Yeah.
but I had major anxiety.
Mm,
That is, it's a lot better well controlled now. But like that first year, granted, I'm only on year 2.5 or so, but it was rough that first year
yeah.
after being
How long?
diagnosed.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I mean, how long did it take for you to? I we kind of talked about it in the last episode, but do you feel like you went through like a process of grieving your health? Because
Yeah.
I know, like, when you first get diagnosed, sometimes it's like you feel that immediate relief where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so
Hmm.
validated for feeling how bad I've been feeling with not getting any
Yeah.
answers and misdiagnoses, and then it seems to sometimes quickly move into like a deep sense of regret and like um
Hmm. For sure.
denial and all of those things. So did you go through that? Did you recognize that?
Yes, for sure. I sometimes relate to what Taylor Swift says, where she's like, "I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it." Um, that was me. And I still get those feelings sometimes. But then I remember how bad I felt. Like
Mm,
I remember waking up in the mornings and trying to get my kids ready for school and just physically not being able to because of how
yeah.
bad I felt. And I would trade taking this medication any day and being, finally having a diagnosis any day over having to feel like that again. Like that was terrible. I mean, that was awful when you feel like you can't take care of your family or go to work or, it was just awful. So,
Mm,
yeah, there was a definitely a grieving point, and there still is some days, when before I got started feeling bad. You miss when you see pictures of like before you felt bad, or like,
yeah.
and not that I feel bad now. I feel great most days. There's times. I mean, it's it is what it is, but I feel pretty great most days. Even I have other health things that I still deal with, but I mean, I have 3 doctor's appointments next week.
Wow.
But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But for the most part, it's better, definitely, than before. So I'm thankful.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's so crazy. I feel like
Yeah.
it's so wild how you can go from feeling somewhat okay, and then in a period of just a couple months or even weeks, there's just such a like rapid
Yeah.
decline in your health, and it like
Yeah.
hits you so hard.
Yeah. I feel like it was months for me after COVID in November of 2020. Like after that, and to be honest, I wasn't even that sick with COVID. My husband had it way worse than I did. Um, I'm not saying COVID caused it, but my doctors believe that it amped it up. I probably would have
For
gotten it
sure.
later on in life, or maybe it wouldn't have been as bad. But they do believe that it kind of amped up the situation because that next February I was just down. I mean, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, my husband was
I
way more sick with COVID than I was. I mean, it was weird.
It's interesting.
And I feel like,
I haven't.
go ahead.
Go for it. Oh, basically, I feel like I haven't done a ton of research into the science of all this stuff, but I read that, unless it's caused by, you know, a different autoimmune disease or something, a lot of the times you are genetically predispositioned to have adrenal
Yeah.
insufficiency of some kind. But it is interesting how different health experiences can accelerate, I feel, that diagnosis. Because my doctor told me the
Yeah.
same thing. I got like a stomach eating parasite when I was in Nepal, and then later on got mono, and those two like instances they
Oh, yeah.
believe accelerated that growth of Addison's disease. Not growth of Addison's, but I was diagnosed at 22 years old versus maybe like 50 or 60 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. It's crazy. And I'm like still like, because I have the psoriasis, and they say more than if you have one autoimmune thing, some more can tag along.
Right.
And then this past year, I've just randomly started breaking out in hives like all over my body.
Mm,
So I take injections for my psoriasis now. I take my Addison's meds, and I now currently take shots. So because I have chronic urticaria, which is chronic hives, and they don't know why I'm breaking out in them.
mm.
So I have to take shots for those now too. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, I look fine on the outside. But like when I have to tell my work, like I have all these doctor's appointments, and we look completely fine on the outside, but on the inside, it's a different story. You don't ever
How?
really know
Yeah.
what people are going through. Like you really don't know. It's it's insane.
How did you feel like that impacted you, even leading up to the diagnosis and then post-diagnosis of recovering, and the fact that this disease is somewhat invisible to the
Mhm.
public? How did that kind of impact you in different areas of your life?
It's it's hard. So like I'll be around people, and I'll be like my alarm will go off on my phone, like I have to take my medicine, and you get these looks like, what do you have to take medicine for? I'm like,
Yeah.
and so, and it's not that I don't care to explain it to them. It's just I hate that they have to ask, or I hate that it's just there and there's an alarm going off my phone. But I do. I'm like, I tell them, I have Addison's disease, and they're like, I've never heard of that. Um, my husband did meet one person in the elevator one day. And he was talking to him. I think he was a doctor in an elevator, and he was like, "Yeah, we're here because my wife has Addison's disease." And he was like, she's a true Addison's disease." And he was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "That's rare." He was like, "You don't ever hear of people having like a true Addison, Addisonian person." He
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
"That's
yeah.
super crazy." He was like, and he was a doctor. Um, so it's just trying to explain it to people. All my family and friends pretty much know, but still, like people at my work, um it's hard to explain when you. And thankfully, my work is great. I tell my husband and my mom all the time, like my job helped me through a lot of my anxiety.
Mm.
Um, and they're very good about when I need to take off for doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So I have to explain that to them sometimes too. That my health and things like that. And I really don't care to explain it to people. I like talking about it because it is so rare, but it's
Yeah.
hard to explain
It
because
is very.
they're confused. Sometimes they're like, we have these things that sit on top of our kidneys. Like, what?
I know, and then half the time they're like, "Oh yeah, I think my neighbor's dog had that."
Yes, it's always the dogs. I
It's
my
always the
hairdresser's
dogs.
dog. My hairdresser's dog has Addison's disease.
Are you
Her dog.
serious?
Yes. Um, which is wild. She thinks it's so cool though. And then actually there's a lady up the road that has Addison's disease. I know her daughter, and her son goes to the school I teach at, and we actually went to the same endocrinologist for a little while, which is
No
crazy.
way.
Yes, and
So
I've
you've met
never
her
like,
before?
yeah, I've seen her like out. I know her daughter. I've talked to her daughter. But we went to the same endocrinologist for a while. She's an older lady. Um, but yeah, she has Addison's too, which is crazy. And I've not really like got to speak with her or anything, but um, that was crazy that in the same county right up the road, there's somebody else that has
Statistically,
it.
I feel like that's pretty thin chances.
Yeah. Yes, my mind was blown. I don't know anybody else in
Interesting.
Tennessee that has Addison's that I know of.
Yeah, I have yet to meet anybody with it either, but I feel like that's what's cool about this type of format of talking to other people through this
Yes.
is you get to like hear other people's stories, and it's so insane the similarities between all of our diagnosis stories. It's
Yeah.
almost like we all went through the same like steps to get diagnosed and the same symptoms of like the showering and taking
Yes.
all the energy out, waking up and going black, like the shivering, the sweats, the craving of salt, like
Yes. Yeah, before my diagnosis, I could eat like my thing was like hot sauce. And
mm.
I guess it was just the salt now that I think about it, and like the pepperoncinis.
Oh
Like I
yeah, I
could
love those.
down those.
Yeah.
I could down those like nobody's business. But
Yeah.
after my diagnosis, I don't crave them as much, which is insane. It is insane. Like that blew my mind because before I would just like dip my popcorn in buffalo sauce. No big deal. And I mean, it was wild to me. And I was like telling my husband, I was like, I just don't want that stuff anymore, which is super weird.
Yeah. It really was like your body telling you, "Hey, you need like this salt."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your body's telling you that. I mean, I remember growing up. I don't know how early back Addison's symptoms, whatever, but I love pepperoni peppers as well. And I used to go skiing and keep a glass jar in my pocket, and then I'd
Yeah.
eat them on the
Oh,
chairlift. It's like,
yeah.
but now I'm
I
like,
would
I
eat a whole
never
jar
want
of
to do
medicine.
that. Yeah,
Me
for
too.
sure.
That's insane.
And then Bloody Mary mix, I would just drink, like it's called Zing Zang. In the
Yeah.
months leading up to it, I would go through a bottle of that every like 2 days, and it was just the tomato juice, the salt, and everything. But now I'm like,
Yes.
I don't hardly have that anymore.
Yeah. The pickles and the pepperoncinis was all my friends. They were like, I had a friend that used to bring me some home from her work because she knew how much
Oh
I loved
man,
them. It's
yeah,
crazy.
of course, man. So how do you feel like you've adjusted post? You know, you're 2 years in now, and I know that at least my endocrinologist, when I was diagnosed, they told me like, hey, it's going to take some time for you to figure out how you respond to your steroids, your dosages and stuff, because um, the hard part is like when you kind of feel crummy, um, with Addison's disease, it's hard to tell if that's because of the disease or if
Hmm.
that's just because, you know, I ran 3 miles or worked out yesterday. It's hard to
Yes.
differentiate
Yeah.
your fatigue if it's due to Addison's or just being a regular human and being overworked. So, how do you feel like you're at 2 years in now after
Yeah.
going through all of this?
Um, so I remember messaging you quite a bit. Like I got a hold of some people on Instagram that helped a lot. I messaged you and like two other girls about like their dosage and which I think is a good thing, you know, to like we have to all figure it out by ourselves. We have to figure it out. But it's also a good thing to like I feel like see what other people do and what helps them to maybe you can kind of figure out what'll help you while also listening to your doctor.
Right.
Um, that's a big thing too because your doctor is going to tell you for sure. But mine, I actually I went to one endocrinologist for a couple months and then I changed to another one. So you do have to find good doctors. We drive over an hour to the one I see now, but he's great. So I mean, it really
Mm.
depends on your doctor too. um, so I finally found like the right dose for me. Um, so you kind of have to do all that on your own. But yeah, I feel like talking with people, that first year my anxiety was through the roof. So anytime I would like adjust medication or wouldn't feel right or I didn't know how to accept those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe because my anxiety was so bad after going through everything that I had went through. Um, I remember messaging you. Even I was like, Levi, what do you? I was like, my anxiety was so bad. I'm like kind of embarrassed.
I mean, you
And I
went through
was like,
something traumatic, so
yeah.
it makes sense.
So I was like, what do you take? Two other girls and another older man on Instagram, but everybody was super helpful. So like that's the thing. Like in this community, I've found that people are super helpful. Um, and like anybody that I've messaged, they've always been willing to respond. I mean, and tell me like their experience and how things went. So that helped me get through a lot. And so like on days where like I've like not ate as much, like one thing that's helped too is like I have to eat. Like
Mm,
I like can't go with that because like I'll get I've noticed that I'll get weaker quicker than like my husband will if he's, not ate for a little while.
mm,
Um, I'll get weaker too, like if I've drank a lot but not ate enough salt for that day.
right.
Um, so like you eventually, my mom tells me all the time, she was like, I love how you've learned how to manage this because even though you're listening to your doctor, there's still a lot that like day to day, I feel like you have to figure out on your own.
100%.
Um, so like, what dosage is right for you and what you should be eating or drinking, um, you'll eventually figure it out. I mean, it's very difficult the first year, I'm not gonna lie. I'm only in year two and there's still days and I expect that I expect I'm 31 years old. I'm not getting any younger and it's just it is what it is and you will learn to it's kind of like I'm reminded of um a message that our preacher actually preached Wednesday night. He was like, it says that the Lord says, take my yoke upon you, my burdens are light. Um and it reminded me that that first year I put all the burden on myself instead of
Mm,
letting him help me deal with it. So I just put all the burden on myself to not and not didn't rely on him about helping me deal with it, I guess. So I mean, after you go through something like that, you have to navigate those things. I guess what I'm trying to say. I feel like I'm all over the place now.
no, that's really
But yeah,
good. It like forces you to develop a
yeah,
sort of resilience
yeah,
because you
for
just push
sure.
through one of the hardest like health, issues
Yeah,
some people have ever gone through, and it's like really scary and traumatic, but you come out on the other side like so much stronger, and
yeah,
um just like you don't really take no for an answer anymore. You're like, something's wrong
yeah,
with me and I'm gonna like,
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go and figure it out. Like I've went to the doctor so many times. I mean, and it really helps you like be more tough, I guess. Be
mm-hmm,
more. Addison's disease is something that really, you know, if it's not treated every day, it can be scary. So I mean, you have to face those fears. um, and I just, let the Lord help me deal with that. And it's not that Addison's is a burden. I just put it all on me, I guess, in that first year. And so um, I've learned more to let him help me deal with that.
yeah,
But yeah, you just have to, see what's best for you, talk to your doctors, message people, and get them to talk with them about what they do and what
yeah.
helps them. And then you can try here and there because it is a trial and error. I mean, there's, different medications. Some people have like a pump, but I
Yeah, I've
don't think
seen
they
that.
have that in the US, though, do they?
I've like only seen it in like Britain, and you probably follow Maria in
Yeah,
Norway. She's got
yeah.
one.
And she does
Um,
really well with that, which is
yeah,
crazy. That's crazy to me that that's a thing.
I
Like,
know.
that's
I
a
feel like
like
we're
something.
behind.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm excited to see like the developments and things that can help us live
yeah,
better quality life. Like, in the last episode we talked about the emergency injection kit and just the peace of mind that that would bring if you had it all just in
yeah,
one pen that you can just take with you wherever, because I feel like the inconvenience of having like five separate things that you need and then a specific order you need to do
yeah.
to actually inject it is so overwhelming to the point where people don't even
It
bring it
is.
with them.
Yeah. when I first got diagnosed, I messaged somebody and I was like, do I need to carry this with me every day, or do you like leave it in the house in the fridge? Like,
I know,
what do
yeah.
you do? And she was like, oh, I carry mine with me everywhere because if I was in a car wreck, like, and see, I didn't know that. Like, I feel like that wasn't very well explained to me by my doctor, my
Yeah.
endocrinologist at the time. Um, so it's very, and now I carry it with me everywhere. I mean, it's always in my purse in a medical bag thing. But yeah, there's instructions and
Yeah.
um, I I work alongside a girl. We work in the same room, and tell her my shots in here. And thankfully, there's a nurse at our school, so like I tell her too, and
Yep.
she knows that like it's well managed, and so I'm thankful for that too at my job. But um, another thing is to make sure you tell people around you, that you have this thing because it is invisible, and so they don't know unless you tell them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like that's super important. And how about like your family? How is your family? It sounds like you have a great support system and your husband
Yeah.
and your family around you. So like how have they played a part in your kind of recovery and acceptance of this disease?
Yeah, my son, he's 11 now, so um, he was like 8, going on 9 when I was diagnosed. He was probably 9. When I was in the hospital, they didn't understand. They couldn't come see me in the hospital. They just knew, hey, mom's in the hospital. And I'm always like a go-getter. So even on my worst day before I got diagnosed, I was like, um, just trying to get things done. And they knew I felt bad, but they didn't. We just try to keep them happy. I mean, they're kids, and they're innocent. So they didn't really notice anything. They just knew I was in the hospital, and we drive by the hospital now, and my little girl, she remembers that that's where I was, and she's like, "Mom, that was your hospital." Um, so they know, um, and they know how much like better I'm doing now. Um, my little girl sometimes she's like, "You still have Addison's disease, Mom?" Because she sees I have to wear this
Oh yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "You still have that, Mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah, baby, I'll have that for the rest of my life. Like that won't ever go away." Um, my son, he's very well informed. He knows exactly what to do. Like if he knows about you, like I've told him about your videos and doing
That's
this,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
yeah, he's. I actually think he might have watched that video with me, that YouTube video you did.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, he's very well informed. He has a phone. He knows he could probably give me my injection. I
Wow.
wouldn't put it past him. He's probably not something he would want to do, but he would definitely try his best. Um,
Wow.
my husband is my husband. He doesn't. I'm thankful for. Um, he doesn't let me think that I can't do anything. Um, I feel like I'm getting emotional again. Sorry. Despite all the health stuff, he doesn't ever like let me think that I can't do something, which is I'm super thankful for. Um, not that he's like pushy or anything, but he's like, I'm like, oh, I don't know if, um, like if I want to go on a roller coaster, like I have anxiety. So I'm like,
Mm,
I don't like if I want to go on a roller coaster with my kids or like, he's like, you can do that. You're fine. Um, and it's like little things that I'll be afraid of. He reminds me not to be afraid, which
yeah.
I'm super thankful for because with this also comes a fear that you have to push past.
Yeah.
Um, so he helps me get through that, and I'm thankful. But they're very accepting. My family, like I said, my mom, she's like, I'm so surprised and just thankful about how well you've learned to manage this. Like,
Mm,
I'm very thankful. And like when we go on hikes and stuff, like I'll hike with my dad and he'll be like, you've got your medicines, right? Like you've you've got everything that you need. And he's a very severe diabetic. So I'm like, you
Oh,
got everything you need.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we're kind of keep each other in check in that
Right.
situation. Yeah. So my family has been very well. They've helped me a lot through a lot of this.
That's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool to hear. 'Cause I know a lot of people, they it's already such an isolating experience, and
Yes.
you kind of, when you go through it, you truly, even if you have family around you and friends and stuff, like, you feel so alone. So to come out on the
Yeah.
other side and have a support system of people who love you and who are like passionate and um are not just gonna like sit there and pat your back and be like, hey, it's okay, you
Yeah.
don't, whatever, but they're actually gonna
Yeah.
challenge you, like your
Hmm.
husband, and say, hey, no, you, despite this disease, you're still capable of living a fulfilling
Yes.
life.
And it's having those people around you, like see you going out on all these cool adventures and that girl from Norway and those people are who I look up to. Like that is what I strive, for my life, even, with everything going on. And
Yeah,
that's I feel like in the end that's all we can do, no matter what the sickness is, no matter, what kind of what's going on. We've just got to keep looking forward. I mean,
absolutely.
that's it. Yeah.
It's a one day at a time thing. I mean, we have it
Yes.
for our whole life, so it's a life
Yeah.
of managing symptoms and just having and working at having like the right perspective, because it can be
Yeah.
hard to, or I mean, it can be
Yes.
easy to spiral sometimes, but
That was me the first year, the
yeah,
spiraling. But thankfully I came out of that. And it I there's a lot that um I went to the hospital a lot, I guess. Me and my husband were pulling out some papers after I just gotten out of the hospital, some papers of me yeah, I'm going to be honest, running back to the hospital because of anxiety. Um, and he pulled out some of those papers earlier because we were looking up, when I had got exactly diagnosed and stuff like that. And one of those papers was from where my anxiety was so bad.
mm,
And he pulled those papers out and he was like, "Do you want me to throw these? What do you?" I was like, we were talking and I was like, "Can you just throw those away?" Like those papers from where I had been to the hospital for anxiety because there was not that I'm dismissing it, but that's not a part that I want to look back on. Um, so moving forward, we're gonna be positive about this the best we can be.
yeah,
Because it is difficult. It
it
can be
is.
if we let it.
Absolutely. And I do feel like if there's anybody listening to this or watching this who has like just been recently diagnosed in a couple months, I feel like it is okay to to spiral, it's okay to
Yes.
like go through that. What said last time is like that grieving process of feeling like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like you said in the beginning, I have to take these pills for the rest of my life. I don't want that for me. I don't
Yeah.
want that to be my life. I remember I called
Yeah.
one of my friends. My breakdown came when I was at home, I think 2 weeks after my diagnosis, and I was laying on the couch, and my best friend was about to get married, and they were having their bachelor party, and I couldn't go to that because I was recovering from my crisis. And I remember just like looking up at the ceiling, and just my mom was like, "Hey, have you like told any of your friends like about this?" And I said, "No, like I I don't want to burden them with this. I don't. They've got other stuff to focus on and stuff." And I know I started to cry in that moment, and I asked my mom asked, or she encouraged me to tell one of my friends. So I called one of them and I was
Mm.
like, "Hey man, this is what's going on. Like, I have this disease for the rest of my life, and like I have to take these pills and carry a syringe with me, and I don't know if I can do this. I literally don't know if I can do this." And I
Yeah.
remember he told me, he said, "Levi, you don't have a choice." And
Yeah.
as harsh as that sounded in that moment, it literally like really did flip a switch in me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have a choice. This will
Yeah.
be with me for the rest of my life. So it's up to me and how I choose to view this. I can view this as a burden, or I can view this as
Yeah.
a blessing. And truly, I feel like to me, it
Yeah.
has been a blessing. The things that have come out of it have been unbelievable. And it's
For
cliche to say,
sure.
but I really wouldn't trade it.
Yeah. I know. Like I said, I felt, you know, I remember feeling so bad, and I wouldn't trade. I feel so much better now. Like there's no
Yeah,
way I would go back to that. There's no way. Um, I just couldn't. I mean, this is who I am now. You know what I mean?
mm,
It just that's how it is. And
yeah,
and once you get to the point where you can accept that, things will get better. Like
yeah,
it gets better. I
yeah,
mean, life might not get better. We all go through things,
yeah,
but as long as you just keep going forward and try to just stay positive, it helps.
absolutely. So on that note, is there anything that you would say to somebody who's listening to this or watching this who has like just been diagnosed? Because a lot of the people who at least follow the Addison's Advocate page or watch the YouTube video and then leave comments are like, "Hey, I've just been diagnosed today."
Yeah.
Like people are just looking. You remember how it was. You're looking for
Yeah.
something. What would you say to somebody who's just been diagnosed?
Um, I would tell them, find a big thing you can do is find people like Levi. And there's people out there. I mean, they may not be right next to you, but there is people out there that are willing to talk to you and like message you and even like speak to you on the phone. Like people are willing, because they've been there, like we've been there. So find those people in that community that's gonna lift this disease up because you have this the rest of your life. Like um, instead of dragging it down and dragging, everything's just terrible. Like it's not gonna be terrible forever. It may feel terrible right now because I promise you, for me, it felt terrible. Um, but just find those people that are gonna lift it up. Find those people that are, doing some things with this disease, and just going for it. But and then talk to them. Find a good endocrinologist. And I understand that that is tedious and it takes time, and you have to call around and insurance, and it's oh gosh. Um,
Yeah,
but just be patient. Another big thing is, oh my gosh, you have to be patient. Like it's not going to happen tomorrow. And I had to tell myself that every single day. Like it's not, before going through all this stuff and finding doctors and trying to figure out dosage and things like that. It's going to take time. Just be patient with yourself. Be
mm,
patient with doctors. Try to find the right doctor. Um, and then just try to live your life the best you can. I know that it's hard in that first little bit. And like I have other health things too.
yeah,
And this is just one. And but
yeah,
this is, the Lord made doctors and medications and for a reason. So we just have
yeah,
to get after it and do the best we can every day. Keep
yeah.
yourself busy. Um,
It's a big one.
yeah, I sat around, and rest is good. Don't get me wrong. Um, let's just try not to be in that state. Like try to keep yourself busy. Like keep your mind occupied.
Yeah,
That was a big one for me. Keeping my mind occupied on the people around me. Just things like that, whether it be like a job or anything. Um, that helped me a lot too. My job helped me
mm,
get through a lot. I wasn't working. Here's an example. Before my Addison's disease and diagnosis, I wasn't working full time. After my Addison's disease and diagnosis, I now have a full-time job.
hey,
So, I mean, yeah, it is. Just keep yourself busy. It'll help you
yeah,
more ways than you think.
absolutely. That's great
Yeah.
advice. That's really really good. Well, dang, Deborah, thank you so much for sharing your story and just being vulnerable. I know you said you just recently kind of got to a place where you feel open and enough to be
Yeah.
vulnerable in this way and like share your story. And by you doing that, I truly believe that a lot of people are going to experience a lot of just peace and freedom and just identifying with somebody like you who is still out there doing life and as a mom of two kids and is staying busy. That's like such an encouraging thing to hear. And your mentality is also like, intoxicating because you have such a positive, you view everything in such a positive light, even though you've gone through like some of the most traumatic things that somebody can go through.
Yeah. You'll get there. I guess that's something to tell everybody. They'll get there too. I mean, it's not easy, and I still have my days.
Yeah. I mean, we all do, and it's okay too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, where can people find you if they want to like reach out to you? They watch this and are like, man, I want to connect with her. Where can they find you?
So I have Instagram and Facebook, and my Instagram is not. So like this past year, I like took a big social media kind of break, and I've kind of stayed there, and I'm kind of liking it. So,
that's
but
fine,
I'm still on there. Like I'm still like, seeing like I get on there for like people like you to see what you guys are up to, and like I have other people that have Addisons on there too, and I like seeing what they're up to. But I'm still on there. It's Deb.Northrup700 on Instagram. I don't know if that's a lot to type out. I don't know if you
I'll put it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm on there, and please, you can message me on there. Like I will respond, I promise, especially if it's about Addison's disease. I don't get those conversations much, so and I don't get to like talk to people about it often. So I'm very willing to talk about it with anyone. You can find me on there, and we can message. I do have Facebook too. It's Deborah Northrup. If you want to add me as a friend, we can message on there, and I'm more than willing to talk to anybody about it, for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'll put your full name spelled correctly and everything on Instagram and YouTube and everywhere else that this thing is going to live, so that people can find you, look you up.
Yes.
I'll link your profiles and everything so they can keep up with you and ask you some questions. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. This has been so awesome. I feel like this is just an amazing second episode, and I'm so excited. I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll have you on either. I feel like it's nice to get like the story a bit, and then maybe at a later time we can hone in on something else like specific, on a later like episode or something like that. But thank you guys who are watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or Facebook, wherever you're watching this, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Stay tuned for future episodes as they come out. I'll make sure to let you guys know so that you can tune in and ask some questions and all that good stuff. But until next time, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody.